Hi, and welcome back to Beans and Bezels. If you haven't already noticed, most of the watches that I've reviewed so far are either from German brands or Microbrands. And this isn't an accident. I intentionally seek out these watches as I really enjoy them. So when I first heard about Heinrich, a German microbrand that is developing 70s inspired dive watches, I was excited. I quickly got in touch with the owner Wolfgang and requested to be put on the list of reviewers. Fast forward 3 to 4 months and I finally got my hands on the Taucher. Taucher means diver in German, and these watches are really fantastic in the metal. There's a few things that I repeatedly echo on this page, and among those is my love for 70s watch design, dive watches, and more generally tool watches. That's putting aside my illogical love for blue, so you can already see why these watches appeal to me. The Heinrich Taucher will be released on Kickstarter later this year with an early bird price of $639. They will be available in 3 standard models, the black dial, the blue dial, and the green dial. And Wolfgang was kind enough to let me spend time with all 3. The $639 price tag is on the higher end of the microbrand diver spectrum that we're seeing today, but when you consider the fact that these watches are made in Germany, this isn't unreasonable at all. Wolfgang has been very transparent with his entire manufacturing and assembly setup, with basic manufacturing occurring in Hong Kong and the rest in Germany. According to him, these watches will be audited by the Chamber of Commerce and will be issued a certificate of origin to have the Made in Germany label on the dial and case back. He has shared the entire breakdown with me, and I believe he will make these available to you if you request him. Much respect to the brand. But let's get to the watches now. The case measures 41mm in diameter, 48mm from lug to lug, and 13.5mm tall. Realistically though, it's closer to 11.5mm tall since the 2mm crystal protrudes out of the case a fair bit. The case design is very 70s and very appealing. It looks like a watch that was cut out of a slab of metal, and I love all the angular surfaces. It has a very aggressive design and just screams tool watch. The case is almost entirely brushed with a thin polished edge on the top surface. There are short lugs, if you can even call them that, and they pair with the bracelet to give you an almost integrated bracelet aesthetic. The lug width is 20mm and you have drilled through lugs. Everything here is vertically brushed and the finishing is great. There is a 120 click unidirectional bezel that has a sapphire insert. All the bezel elements are loomed with the colored BGW9 pigment. The bezel action is excellent and I didn't notice any backplay. Most impressive is the terrific knurling and patterning on the bezel edge that makes it very easy to grip and operate. Excellent functionality aside, this looks pretty awesome too. There's a signed screw-down crown at the 3 o'clock position that is well proportioned and also has excellent grip thanks to the aggressive knurling. I didn't notice any crown or stem wobble. The signed crown has the brand's logo that seems to also be filled with some kind of paint. Unnecessary, but it definitely looks cool. Flipping it over, you have a screw-down case back that is also stamped with the brand's name and logo. There's a very neat wave pattern surrounding this, and once again it is painted like on the crown. The case back isn't very tall and helps improve the overall comfort on the wrist. Good job here. This watch is rated for up to 200 meters of water resistance, which is more than reasonable for an 11.5mm diver. Overall, the case is a huge success and I don't have any problems with the design or execution. The bezel and crown are particularly impressive. I was sent all 3 dial options, black, blue and green. I ended up wearing the green dial the most, but the blue one looks amazing too. The base of the dials have a sunburst finish and this comes through beautifully on the blue and green variants. According to the Heinrich website, he's open to adding new colors to the Kickstarter campaign based on feedback. I think green and red are going to be the new popular colors for 2020 and 2021, so I expect to see the green one sell out very quickly. As you'll see throughout this review, the Taucher takes many steps forward in establishing itself as a robust and weatherproof tool watch. But there is one area in which this watch trades functionality for form, and that is with the absence of a minute or seconds track. This is a bold move and one that Wolfgang stands by. Realistically, this watch is unlikely to be used as a serious diving instrument, but even as an everyday tool watch, some method of short interval tracking would have been nice. That said, it doesn't take away from the design, and if anything, the negative space really allows the hour indices to come through. The oversized and applied hour indices look quite amazing. You have a perfectly symmetric distribution of indices with teardrops at the 4 extremities and circular indices for the rest. These indices, like the rest of the metal dial elements, are brushed stainless steel. They do have enough of a shimmer to them under lighting variations. The indices are filled with colored BGW9 pigment and quite generously so. You have the brand's name and logo under the 12 o'clock position. There was a survey conducted regarding the size of this logo and I believe the final production units will have a smaller logo. It does look pretty large in renders and photographs, but it never felt that way in person. The hands are also brushed and the hour and minute hands are generously filled with the same colored loom. I like the handset design and I think the simple design allows the dial to really shine. The finishing on the hands of all the watches are good, but under my macro lens I did notice some residue on one of the hands of the green dial. This is a prototype and the quality control on the final units will be much tighter. The second hand has a loomed rectangular element, which is always a win in my book. But the really neat part of this is the painted tip. The tip is painted with red and white stripes and is a subtle nod to Wolfgang's hometown of Stuttgart. The painted tip was added to resemble the Stuttgart TV tower. I think this subtle splash of color works amazing on all three dials, and particularly so on the green dial. As mentioned above, all the dial elements are loomed with BGW9 Super Luminova. The pale yellow color of these elements has been created by mixing BGW9 with some sort of pigment. The loom wasn't great initially, but after a short blast of UV light, it seemed to be very good and held its charge really well. I think this mixture of pigment and custom colors alters the luminosity of this material a bit, because I noticed a similar performance from the Goodspeed Sonoma that I reviewed a while ago. The daylight to darkness transition seems to better charge the material than just transitioning it from indoor lights to darkness. I've talked to Wolfgang about the loom and he says he will look at improving it, and if he can improve the charging capacity of this mixture, this will be perfect. In terms of loom layout, I don't think you can ask for better. All the bezel markers and numerals are loomed. The hour indices are huge and generously filled with loom. The hour and minute hands are also well loomed, and I love the fact that the seconds hand is also loomed. The bracelet is awesome and it fits the 70s aesthetic perfectly. The links are machined well and the vertical brushed finishing is very good. The links are pushpin based, although I would have liked if it were screw based instead. But this was fairly easy to size, so I'm not too bothered. The links articulate wonderfully and the bracelet almost feels like a fabric and flows effortlessly. The clasp is pretty typical of Microbrands and I love them as they're packed with functionality. It's a ratcheting clasp allowing for on-the-go quick adjustment and also has 3 micro adjustment slots. For a rugged tool watch like this, I couldn't think of a more appropriate clasp. Given the angular case shape, I expect the case and bracelet fitment to be perfect, and I'm glad to report that it is. All 3 watches had exceptional case and bracelet fitment. The end links extend out of the case a bit before it reaches the point of articulation, and I've heard from Heinrich that this will be changed to align perfectly with the case. I'm happy to also hear that they're going to extend the lugs and not shrink the end links, because the way it's set up right now allows for a perfect wrist fit, and that has a lot to do with how the end links are situated. With the current lug design, I was unable to use any of my straps on this watch. I tried to slide a few NATOs onto there, but they wouldn't fit. But with the extended lug design on the final units, this should be possible. You can look at the renders on their website. These watches are using a Sellita SW200-1. I didn't get a chance to properly log the accuracy of all 3 watches over a reasonable period of time, but I was observing roughly -5 seconds per day on the green dial for about 24 hours. I had way too many watches in for review this week, so my apologies. But for a well-designed and robustly constructed $639 watch, I think the SW200-1 is quite a good deal. I've got a few Sellita 200s in my personal collection and I think they're pretty good movements. There's currently a ghost date position on the prototypes, but this will be removed on the final production units. This almost rectilinear case design might give you the impression that this would feel awkward on the wrist, but it is quite the opposite. The 41mm case diameter, 48mm lug-to-lug width and 11.5mm height sits very comfortably on my 6¼ inch wrist. This watch sits low on the wrist and hugged my wrist very comfortably. As you would expect from a watch that looks like this watch is a bit heavy, and the clasp is quite chunky too. Adjusted to fit my 6¼ inch wrist, this watch weighed roughly 150 grams. But the wrist presence is strong and feels robust. I feel like this watch can take anything you throw at it, and that's just the way I like my watches. This has been a long review, so I won't take any more of your time. To put it plainly, if you like how it looks, go ahead and back this one. It's a solid piece of metal that is likely to survive most of what life can throw at it, and also manage to look beautiful while doing it. This is not another Submariner homage, and it has enough of its own personality to warrant a place in any collection. Also, brands that are willing to be completely transparent and disclose their entire manufacturing chain earn a lot of respect for me. In terms of price, your money is getting you very good components, from a good movement to well-designed and engineered bezels and crowns, and a great choice of clasp. The dial choices are great, and the overall case construction looks like it's built for the long haul. As with any Kickstarter project, exercise caution, develop a good relationship with the owner, and more importantly, be prepared to wait. But more often than not, the wait is worth it, and with the Heinrich Taucher, I think it will be. Once again, thanks for watching, and be sure to read the full-length review in the link below.